A catastrophic ice storm struck on New Year's Eve. At a small, failing auto repair shop, Tasha was struggling with no power, frozen equipment, and her 3-year-old daughter shivering in the cold. Suddenly, the roar of engines pierced through the storm. 25 street racers appeared at her garage door, their high-performance cars sliding on ice, begging for shelter from the deadly freeze. Though terrified, her compassionate heart led her to open the bay doors. Together, they survived the night that would test every assumption she had about these dangerous street racers. She had no idea that just 3 days later, her act of mercy would bring 1,500 roaring engines to her doorstep, changing not only her life, but an entire neighborhood forever. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow I have something extraordinary waiting for you. The fluorescent light in the small office flickered one last time before dying completely, leaving Tasha Monroe in darkness except for the glow of her phone screen. 11:47 p.m. She had exactly 13 minutes before the new year arrived, and she would face it the same way she had faced the last one, alone, broke, and running out of options. 34 years old, and Tasha looked closer to 45. The grease under her fingernails was permanent, a badge of the impossible dream she had been chasing for 2 years. Monroe's Auto Repair sat at the edge of Philadelphia's industrial district, in a neighborhood where legitimate businesses struggled to survive among abandoned warehouses and empty lots that nobody wanted to develop. Her daughter, Destiny, slept in the corner of the office, wrapped in a sleeping bag on top of 2 moving blankets. The heat had died 3 hours ago when the ancient furnace finally gave up. Tasha had tried everything, but without money for a repair technician, and with the storm raging outside, they were trapped in a building that felt more like a freezer with each passing minute. "Mama, cold," Destiny had whispered before finally falling asleep from exhaustion. Those 2 words had broken Tasha's heart more than any of the rejection letters from banks, the sneering looks from suppliers who refused to work with a single black mother trying to run an auto shop, or the cruel departure of her ex-husband. Marcus had left 18 months ago, claiming he could not handle the pressure of fatherhood and poverty. The truth was simpler and more painful. He had found someone younger, someone without the calluses and exhaustion that came from working 16-hour days, trying to keep a failing business alive. The divorce papers sat in a folder on her desk, stamped with red ink that might as well have been blood. Tasha's phone buzzed with a text message that made her stomach drop. "Final notice. Business license fee due, found $200 by January 5th or face closure." She stared at the message until the letters blurred. The checking account currently held $83. The cash register in the front office contained 27 more. $110 stood between her daughter and homelessness. The auto repair shop had been her father's dream before cancer took him 3 years ago. On his deathbed, he had made her promise to keep it running, to prove that a black woman could succeed in a field dominated by men who looked at her with suspicion and contempt. She had dropped out of engineering school to care for him during his final months, learning everything he could teach her about engines, transmissions, and the art of making broken things whole again. "Baby girl," her father had whispered during one of their last conversations. "You got a gift with machines. You understand them the way I do, the way your grandfather did. This shop, it's more than just a business. It's our family legacy. Promise me you won't let anyone tell you that you don't belong here." She had promised, never imagining how hard it would be to keep that promise. The neighborhood had changed since her father's time. The regular customers who had sustained the business for decades had moved away or died. The newer residents, mostly young professionals drawn by cheap rent, took their cars to franchise shops with corporate backing and advertising budgets. Nobody trusted a struggling shop run by a woman, especially not a black woman working alone. Tasha walked to the small window overlooking the garage floor. 3 cars sat in various states of disrepair. A Honda with transmission problems whose owner could not afford to pay, a Toyota that needed a new engine block she did not have money to order, and her own battered Chevy that needed brake work she kept postponing because customer repairs came first. The garage itself was a relic from another era. 2 service bays with hydraulic lifts that creaked ominously when used. Concrete floors stained with decades of oil and coolant. Fluorescent lights that buzzed even when they worked. The walls were covered with her father's collection of vintage automotive posters and hand-drawn diagrams of engine systems, yellowed with age but still precious to her. Outside, the ice storm that meteorologists had been warning about for days had arrived with devastating force. Freezing rain coated everything in a thick layer of ice that turned the streets into skating rinks. The temperature had plummeted to 15 degrees, and the wind howled through cracks in the garage walls with a sound like screaming souls. Tasha had tried calling the heating repair service, but the automated system informed her that due to the severity of the storm, emergency calls had a 72-hour wait time. Non-emergency repairs would not be scheduled until after the weather cleared. Translation: she and Destiny were on their own. She moved back to her desk and opened the bottom drawer where she kept her emergency supplies. Half a box of granola bars, 2 bottles of water, and a first aid kit that was missing most of its contents. She had used the money meant for groceries to buy transmission fluid for the Honda, hoping the owner would come back with payment. He had not. "How did we get here?" she whispered to the empty office, though she knew the answer. It was a combination of bad luck, systemic barriers, and the weight of trying to succeed in a world that seemed designed to ensure her failure. Every supplier demanded payment up front because she had no credit history. Every bank refused her loan applications because she had no collateral. Every potential customer drove past her shop because they saw a rundown building in a rough neighborhood and assumed the work would be substandard. The few customers who did stop were usually looking for cheap fixes or trying to negotiate impossibly low prices. Just last week, a man in an expensive SUV had pulled in with a check engine light problem. She had diagnosed the issue in 15 minutes and quoted him a fair price for the repair. He had laughed in her face. "I'm not letting some girl mess with my engine," he had said, making the word girl sound like an insult. "I'll take it to a real mechanic." She had wanted to tell him that she had more certifications than most mechanics twice her age, that she could tear down and rebuild an engine blindfolded, that her skills were exactly as good as any real mechanic he would find. Instead, she had smiled politely and watched him drive away, knowing he would pay 3 times what she had quoted at one of the franchise shops in the suburbs. Destiny stirred in her sleep, making small sounds of discomfort. Tasha went to her daughter and adjusted the blankets, tucking them tighter around the small body. At 3 years old, Destiny was smart, curious, and completely unaware of how precarious their situation had become. She thought sleeping in the office was an adventure, like camping indoors. She did not understand that they were sleeping here because the apartment they had been renting was now padlocked, their belongings sitting in a storage unit that would also be locked in 2 days if Tasha could not come up with the overdue payment. "I'm sorry, baby," Tasha whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Mama's trying so hard, but I don't know if it's enough." The clock on the wall clicked over to midnight. Fireworks exploded somewhere in the distance, muted by the storm, but still audible. People across the city were celebrating the new year with champagne and resolutions, with hope for better things to come. Tasha sat in the cold darkness with her sleeping daughter and felt hope slipping away like water through her fingers. Then she heard it, a sound that cut through the howl of the wind and the patter of freezing rain. Engines, not just 1 or 2, but many. High-performance engines that roared with power even as they struggled against the ice-covered streets. Tasha moved to the window and peered out into the storm. What she saw made her blood run cold with fear. A line of sports cars was sliding down the street toward her garage. Not ordinary cars, but heavily modified racing machines. Nissan Skylines with custom body kits, Honda Civics with massive spoilers, Mazda RX-7s with paint jobs that seemed to glow even in the darkness. Behind them came more, at least 24 vehicles moving in a convoy that spoke of organization and purpose. These were street racers, the kind of people her father had always warned her to stay away from, the kind who raced illegally through city streets at night, who operated outside the law, who had reputations for violence and unpredictability. The local news ran stories about them constantly: high-speed chases, accidents, arrests, gang affiliations. The lead car, a midnight blue Nissan 350Z with custom headlights that cut through the storm like lasers, pulled up directly in front of her garage doors. Through the icy windshield, she could make out a figure gesturing urgently. Behind the 350Z, the other vehicles were sliding dangerously on the ice, drivers fighting to maintain control. Tasha's heart hammered in her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to stay hidden, to keep the doors locked, to protect Destiny from whatever these people wanted. But then she saw one of the cars lose control completely, spinning across the ice and slamming into a light pole with a sickening crunch of metal. The driver's door opened and a figure stumbled out, clearly injured. 2 others ran from nearby cars to help, and even from inside her garage, Tasha could see how they shivered in the devastating cold. "Think, Tasha, think," she muttered, backing away from the window. These could be dangerous criminals. They could rob her, hurt her, take what little she had left. But they were also human beings caught in a storm that was becoming more dangerous by the minute, and one of them was hurt. A knock echoed through the garage, loud enough to be heard over the storm. 3 sharp raps on the metal bay door that made Destiny stir in her sleep. "Hello?" called a voice from outside, male and urgent. "Is anyone in there? We need help. We're freezing out here, and we've got injured people." Tasha crept to the small window in the door and looked out. The man standing closest was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a racing jacket that offered little protection from the cold. Behind him, she counted 25 cars total, all in various states of distress. Some had visible damage from slides on the ice. Others had engines running rough, clearly struggling with the extreme cold. "Please," the man called again, and this time Tasha heard genuine desperation in his voice. "We're not here to cause trouble. We just need to get out of this storm. We've been driving for hours trying to find shelter." Tasha looked back at Destiny, still sleeping peacefully, then at the people outside who were clearly in distress. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, something he had said countless times. When someone needs help, you help them. Doesn't matter what they look like or where they come from. You help them because that's what decent people do. Her hand moved to the door controls before her brain had fully processed the decision. The bay door began to rise with a grinding mechanical sound, and cold air rushed in like a physical blow. The man at the front stepped back, his expression shifting from desperation to surprise to gratitude in quick succession. "Thank you," he said simply, his breath creating clouds in the frozen air. "You have no idea what this means." "Get inside quickly," Tasha ordered, her voice steadier than she felt. "All of you. But if anyone makes a wrong move, I'll hit the emergency button and these doors will come down fast enough to trap you all." It was a bluff. The emergency system had been broken for 6 months, but the man nodded seriously, accepting her terms. One by one, the 25 racing cars rolled into her garage, filling both service bays and the waiting area beyond capacity. The drivers emerged from their vehicles, and Tasha got her first clear look at the people she had just invited into her space. They were younger than she had expected, most in their 20s and 30s, with a few older faces scattered among them. Men and women, diverse in ethnicity, all wearing variations of racing gear, jackets covered in sponsor patches that probably were not legitimate sponsors, custom shoes, and expressions that mixed relief with wariness. The man who had knocked on her door appeared to be the leader. He removed his beanie, revealing close-cropped hair and a face marked by a scar that ran from his left eyebrow to his cheek. "I'm Devin," he said, extending a hand that Tasha hesitated only a moment before shaking. "That's my crew. We were heading up from Baltimore to a meet in New York when the storm caught us. Been trying to find shelter for 3 hours. Most places are locked down tight, and honestly, most people take one look at us and assume the worst. Can you blame them? Tasha asked, more sharply than she intended. Street racing is illegal. People get hurt. You're right, Devin said, surprising her with his immediate agreement. But right now, we're just people who are cold and scared and grateful that you opened your door. That took courage. Behind him, the crew was organizing themselves without being asked. Some were checking on the injured driver from the crashed car. Others were assessing vehicle damage. A few had moved to stand near the space heaters that Tasha kept for working on cold days, though the heaters were useless without power. We have someone who's hurt pretty bad, called a young woman with bright blue hair and arms covered in tattoos. He hit his head when we crashed. He's conscious but confused. Tasha moved toward the injured man, her mechanical skills suddenly useless in the face of human injury. But as she knelt beside him, something in her training kicked in. Her father had taught her not just about engines, but about staying calm in emergencies, about systematic problem-solving. "What's your name?" she asked the injured driver gently. "Tyler," he mumbled, his eyes having trouble focusing. "Where am I?" "You're safe. You're in an auto shop and out of the storm. Can you tell me what hurts?" As Tasha worked to assess Tyler's injuries with the limited first aid knowledge she possessed, she became aware of Destiny standing in the office doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit and staring wide-eyed at the crowd of strangers who had filled their space. "Mama?" Destiny's voice was small and frightened. Devin noticed the little girl before Tasha could respond. His entire demeanor changed instantly, his body language shifting from the tough street racer to something gentler. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said softly, crouching down to Destiny's level and keeping a respectful distance. "I'm sorry we woke you up. My name is Devin. What's yours?" Destiny looked at her mother for permission before answering. "Destiny. That's a beautiful name. Were you sleeping?" Destiny nodded, still clutching her rabbit. "It's cold." "It is cold," Devin agreed, then looked up at Tasha. "Is there anything we can do to help? We've got some emergency supplies in our cars. Blankets, hand warmers, food." The offer caught Tasha off guard. She had expected demands, maybe threats, certainly not offers of help. "The heat is out," she admitted, "and there's no power. We've been managing, but—" "Say no more." Devin stood and turned to his crew. "Listen up, everyone. We've got a little girl who's cold and a host who's been generous enough to let us in. Let's show some gratitude. Rico, check your car for those emergency blankets. Maya, you've got that camping stove, right? Let's get something warm going. Tyler needs medical attention, so everyone with first aid training, front and center." The transformation was remarkable. What had been a group of potentially dangerous strangers became an organized unit working with clear purpose. Within minutes, they had created a makeshift warming area using car batteries to power small heating elements. Emergency blankets appeared from trunks. A camping stove materialized, and someone started heating water for tea and instant soup. A tall black man with dreadlocks approached Tasha with a professional-looking first aid kit. "I'm Marcus," he said, then caught her expression. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," Tasha said quickly, though hearing her ex-husband's name had felt like a punch to the stomach. "You know first aid?" "Paramedic training," he confirmed. "Got certified before I started racing. Let me look at Tyler." As Marcus worked on the injured racer, the blue-haired woman who had first called out about Tyler's condition approached Tasha with a steaming cup. "Hot chocolate," she said with a shy smile. "Well, technically it's instant cocoa mixed with hot water, but it's warm. For your daughter?" Tasha accepted the cup, her defenses cracking in the face of continued kindness. "Thank you. What's your name?" "Maya. I'm the crew's communications person. I manage social media for the team, handle sponsorships, that kind of thing." She lowered her voice. "Look, I know what you're thinking. Street racers equal trouble. And yeah, we race, and yeah, technically it's illegal, but we're not criminals. Most of us are just people who love cars and speed and found a community in racing." But people get hurt, Tasha said, thinking of the news reports. I've seen the stories. People get hurt everywhere, Maya replied softly. Car accidents happen whether people are racing or not. The difference is when we're involved, it makes better news. She paused, watching Destiny sip the hot chocolate. How old is she? 3. She's beautiful. Must be hard doing this alone. Tasha stiffened. What makes you think I'm alone? Maya gestured around the garage. No wedding ring. No mention of a partner. Sleeping in your office with your kid during a storm. I'm not judging. I'm a single mom, too. My son is 7. He's with his grandmother tonight, thank God. I wouldn't have been able to race if I'd had him with me. The admission created an unexpected connection. Tasha found herself studying Maya with new eyes, seeing past the tattoos and bright hair to the woman underneath, who apparently understood the same struggles. Devon reappeared with a space blanket that he carefully draped around Destiny's shoulders. This should help keep you warm, little one. It looks like aluminum foil, but it actually traps body heat really well. Destiny looked at the crinkly material with wonder. I'm like a burrito. Devon laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to lighten the tension in the garage. Exactly like a burrito. A warm, safe burrito. Over the next hour, as the storm continued to rage outside, something unexpected happened. The initial fear that had gripped Tasha began to ease, replaced by cautious curiosity. The racers were not what she had expected. They cleaned up after themselves, spoke respectfully, and several of them clearly had mechanical knowledge that rivaled her own. A young Asian man named Chen wandered over to the Honda sitting in the bay, the one with the transmission problems. Mind if I look? He asked Tasha politely. She shrugged. Look all you want. Customer can't afford the repair anyway. Chen spent several minutes examining the car, occasionally making small sounds of interest. Finally, he straightened up. This isn't a transmission problem. Well, it is, but it's not what you think. The torque converter is failing, and it's throwing codes that look like transmission issues. Replace the converter, and this car will run fine. Tasha moved to stand beside him, looking at the engine with fresh eyes. How can you tell? Feel this. Chen put his hand on a specific part of the transmission housing. The vibration pattern is wrong for a full transmission failure. And see this fluid? He pointed to a small leak. Color and consistency indicate converter seal failure. He was right. Tasha realized it immediately, wondering how she had missed it. The repair would cost hundreds less than a full transmission replacement, which meant the customer might actually be able to afford it. You're good, she said, genuine respect in her voice. Chen smiled. I work at my family's shop in Baltimore. Been building engines since I could hold a wrench. Racing is my passion, but mechanics is my profession. Well, then what are you doing street racing? Because the shop is my father's dream, not mine, Chen said quietly, and because when I'm behind the wheel, pushing a car to its limits, I feel alive in a way I never do anywhere else. He looked at her directly. You understand that, don't you? That feeling of doing what you love even when it's hard, even when people judge you for it? Tasha did understand, more than she wanted to admit. As midnight turned to 1 a.m. and then 2, the garage settled into an unusual but comfortable rhythm. Tyler was resting with his head injury stabilized, though Marcus insisted they would need to get him to a hospital as soon as the storm allowed. The crew had organized a meal from their combined emergency supplies, instant soup, granola bars, trail mix, and packages of jerky that they shared generously with Tasha and Destiny. Destiny had overcome her initial fear and was now the center of attention, with multiple crew members taking turns entertaining her with stories and simple games. She sat in Rico's lap as he showed her pictures of his daughter, who was close to Destiny's age. This is Sophia, Rico said, his phone screen showing a little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. She's 4, and she thinks her daddy is the coolest person in the world. Does she know you race? Tasha asked, unable to help herself. Rico's expression grew serious. She knows I love cars, and she knows I compete. What she doesn't know yet is how people judge us for it. One day I'll have to explain that to her, explain that people will see my tattoos and my car and my brown skin and make assumptions, but for now, she just knows her daddy loves her and works hard to give her a good life. The words hit Tasha harder than she expected. She thought about her own father, about the judgments he had faced as a black mechanic in a field dominated by white men, about the assumptions people made about her every single day. Devin had been moving through the garage, checking on his crew and making sure everyone was comfortable. Now he approached Tasha, where she sat on an upturned crate, watching Destiny laugh at something Maya was saying. "Thank you," Devin said simply, "for letting us in. You didn't have to do that." "Honestly, I'm still not sure why I did," Tasha admitted. "Every news report, every story about street racers makes you all sound like dangerous criminals." "Some of us are," Devin said with brutal honesty. "Just like some mechanics are thieves who overcharge customers, and some cops are corrupt, and some teachers are abusive. Being a street racer doesn't make you good or bad, it's just a thing you do. But it's illegal. So is jaywalking. So is speeding on the highway, which literally everyone does. We're just more visible about it." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Look, I'm not saying what we do is right. I'm saying it's more complicated than the stereotypes." Tasha studied his face, seeing the intelligence behind his eyes, the thoughtfulness in his expression. "Tell me the truth. Why do you race?" Devin was quiet for a long moment before answering. "My daughter died," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Leukemia. She was 6 years old and she fought for 2 years, but the cancer won. After she died, my wife left. Said she couldn't look at me without seeing what we'd lost." The pain in his voice was so raw that Tasha felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I started racing because it was the only time I didn't think about her. When I'm on the track or on the streets, pushing my car to the edge of control, for those few minutes I'm not the father who lost his child. I'm just a driver trying to hit the perfect line." He looked at her directly. "We all have our reasons. Chen is escaping his father's expectations. Maya is supporting her son. Rico is trying to prove he's more than the gang member people assume he is. Tyler races because he's running from an abusive home. Everyone here has a story. What about the danger? The accidents?" "Life is dangerous," Devin said quietly. "My daughter died in a hospital bed surrounded by doctors. Tyler's father broke his arm in 3 places just for getting a B on a test. Danger doesn't care if you're being careful or reckless. It finds you anyway." Tasha thought about Marcus, her ex-husband, who had walked away when life got difficult, about the landlord who had padlocked her apartment, about Mrs. Chen from the apartment complex who had called child services because she saw Destiny playing outside unsupervised for 10 minutes while Tasha used the bathroom. Danger came in many forms, and not all of them involved speed. "My father built this shop," Tasha found herself saying, surprising herself with the confession. "He made me promise to keep it running, to prove that a black woman could succeed in this field. But I'm failing. I'm losing the shop, losing everything, and I don't know how to stop it." The admission hung in the air between them. She had not spoken those words out loud to anyone, had barely admitted them to herself. Devin's expression softened with understanding. Sometimes keeping a promise isn't about succeeding exactly the way we planned. Sometimes it's about finding a new way forward. Before Tasha could respond, a loud crack echoed through the garage as a tree branch, heavy with ice, crashed through one of the windows. Cold air rushed in, and several crew members immediately jumped up to cover the broken window with whatever materials they could find. "Everyone okay?" Devin called, his leadership instincts taking over. No one was hurt, but the incident served as a stark reminder of how dangerous the storm had become. Wind howled through the broken window until Chen and Rico managed to secure a piece of plywood over it, using duct tape and the straps from a car's cargo area to hold it in place. "Storm's getting worse," Marcus observed, looking at his phone. "Weather Service is calling it a historic ice storm, power outages across the city, multiple accidents, roads completely impassable. "Then we're stuck here," Maya said, voicing what everyone was thinking. Tasha looked around at the 25 racers who had invaded her space, at her daughter who was now sleeping peacefully in Rico's arms, at the cars that filled every available space in her garage. Stuck was one way to describe it. But looking at these people who had gone from strangers to something approaching friends in just a few hours, she wondered if stuck was really the right word. "Then we might as well make the best of it," she said, surprising herself with her own words. "I've got tools, you've got skills. Who wants to help me fix that Honda?" The suggestion was met with enthusiastic agreement. Over the next few hours, as the storm raged outside, Tasha's garage became something it had not been in years, a place of collaboration and community. Chen worked alongside her on the Honda, his expertise combining with hers to create a repair plan that was both effective and affordable. Maya documented the process on her phone, explaining that her followers loved behind-the-scenes mechanical work. Rico and Devin tackled the Toyota, discovering that the engine block issue was actually a sensor failure, another relatively simple fix that Tasha had been too stressed to see. Others cleaned the garage, organized the chaotic tool situation, and even started a detailed inventory of parts and supplies. Someone found an old radio that ran on batteries, and soon classic soul music filled the space, creating an atmosphere that felt almost festive despite the crisis outside. Destiny woke up briefly around 4 a.m., and Marcus made her more hot chocolate while Tasha took a moment to hold her daughter close. "Are those people our friends now, Mama?" Destiny asked sleepily. Tasha looked around at the racers who had somehow become her allies, working to save the shop she had thought was lost. "Yeah, baby. I think they might be." As dawn approached, painting the ice-covered world outside in shades of pink and gold, the storm finally began to show signs of weakening. The wind died down to a manageable level, and the sleet that had been falling steadily all night tapered off to occasional flurries. Devin stood beside Tasha at the broken window, both of them looking out at a world transformed by ice. Every surface sparkled like it had been coated in diamonds, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. "Roads might be passable in a few hours," he said quietly. "We should probably start thinking about heading out." Tasha felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. "Where will you go?" "Back to Baltimore. The meet in New York will be rescheduled. But Tasha..." He turned to face her. "We don't forget people who help us. The racing community, we take care of our own. And you're one of ours now. I barely know you. You opened your door when you were terrified. You shared what little you had. You worked alongside us like we were colleagues, not criminals." Devin pulled out his phone. "I'm going to give you my number, and the numbers of everyone here. If you ever need anything at all, you call us. Understand? Devin? I can't..." "Yes, you can, and you will, because that's what family does." The word family echoed strangely in the cold garage. Tasha had been alone for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to be part of something larger than herself. As the crew began preparing to leave, they moved with the same organization they had shown all night. Cars were checked, vehicles with damage were assessed, and plans were made for getting everyone home safely. Tyler, whose head injury had been stabilized but still needed proper medical attention, would ride with Marcus in a car that could navigate the ice more safely than his damaged vehicle. One by one, the racers approached Tasha to say goodbye. Chen pressed a business card into her hand. "That's my shop in Baltimore. You ever need parts at cost, you call me." Maya hugged her tightly. "I posted about tonight on our social media. You're going to get customers, trust me." Rico let Destiny kiss his cheek. "You take care of your mama, okay, princess? She's pretty special." When it was time for Devin to leave, he pulled an envelope from his jacket. "This is from all of us. Consider it payment for the shelter and the mechanical expertise." Tasha opened the envelope and gasped. Inside was more money than she made in 3 months when business was good. "I can't accept this." "You can, and you will." Devon said firmly, using the same tone he had used when he told her she would take their phone numbers. Use it to fix this place up. Hire help if you need it. Buy parts. Whatever you need to keep your father's dream alive. Tears streamed down Tasha's face as she clutched the envelope. Why are you doing this? Because you saw us as human beings when most people see us as a problem to be avoided. Because you trusted us with your daughter's safety and your livelihood. And because sometimes the universe puts you exactly where you need to be to help someone who desperately needs it. Devon pulled her into a brief hug. This isn't goodbye, Tasha. We'll see each other again. As the 25 cars pulled out of her garage, engines roaring to life in a symphony of mechanical power, Tasha stood in the doorway with Destiny on her hip and watched them navigate the icy streets. The sun was fully up now, painting everything in brilliant light that made the ice sparkle like a fantasy world. When the last car disappeared around the corner, the garage felt impossibly empty and quiet. But it was a different kind of quiet than before. Not the oppressive silence of loneliness, but the peaceful aftermath of a storm survived together. They left, Destiny observed. They did, Tasha agreed. But they'll be back. She did not know why she was so certain, but she was. Something had changed during that long, terrifying, wonderful night. Something that felt like the beginning of a new story rather than the end of an old one. 3 days passed, and Tasha threw herself into work with renewed energy. The money from the racing crew had been a lifeline, allowing her to pay the urgent bills and buy the parts needed to complete the Honda and Toyota repairs. Both customers had been shocked and grateful when she called to tell them their vehicles were ready at significantly lower costs than originally quoted. How did you figure out it wasn't the transmission? The Honda owner had asked, sounding suspicious of the good news. Consulted with a specialist, Tasha had replied, which was true even if the specialist was a street racer named Chen. Word was spreading about Monroe's auto repair, thanks in part to Maya's social media posts about the ice storm shelter. The posts had gone viral in certain communities, generating thousands of likes and shares. People were curious about the female mechanic who had opened her doors to street racers, who had worked alongside them as equals, who embodied a different vision of what the automotive world could be. New customers began trickling in. Not many, but enough to give Tasha hope. A young woman brought in a Civic with brake problems. An older couple needed help with their truck's electrical system. Each job completed successfully felt like a small victory in a war she had been losing for so long. But late at night, when Destiny was asleep and the garage was quiet, Tasha felt the loneliness creeping back. The companionship of that one night had reminded her of what she had been missing. The racing crew had texted her regularly, checking in and offering support, but it was not the same as having people physically present. On the 3rd day after the storm, Tasha was under a Subaru checking the exhaust system when she heard it, a sound that made her freeze in place, her heart suddenly racing. Engines, many engines, the deep, powerful rumble of high-performance vehicles. She rolled out from under the Subaru and walked to the garage entrance, not quite believing what her ears were telling her. The sound was growing louder, approaching from multiple directions, surrounding her location like an auditory tidal wave. Then they appeared. Not 25 cars this time. Not 50 or 100. 1,500 vehicles rolled down her street in a convoy that seemed to stretch to infinity. Sports cars, muscle cars, imported racers, domestic performance vehicles. Every type of racing machine imaginable, all bearing the marks of street racing culture, custom paint jobs, aggressive body kits, sponsor decals, and tinted windows. "Oh my God," Tasha whispered, stepping out into the street to witness the impossible sight. The lead vehicle was Devon's 350Z, and behind him were Maya's Mazda and Chen's Honda and Rico's Nissan and hundreds more she did not recognize. They filled her street completely, parking in perfect formation on both sides, engines rumbling in an orchestra of mechanical power that made the ground vibrate beneath her feet. Every resident on the street came out to witness the spectacle. Mrs. Washington from next door stood on her porch with her mouth open. Mr. Rodriguez across the street was filming everything on his phone. Children ran to their windows to stare at the incredible display of vehicles. Devin emerged from his car, but he was not alone. Beside him was an older black woman Tasha did not recognize, walking with a cane but with her head held high. Behind them came what appeared to be the leadership of multiple racing crews, all moving with purpose toward Tasha's garage. "Tasha Monroe!" Devin called out, his voice carrying easily in the suddenly quiet street as 1,500 engines fell silent in perfect unison. "We need to talk." Tasha stood frozen, destiny peeking out from behind her legs, unable to process the magnitude of what she was seeing. "Devin, what is this? Why are you all here?" The older woman stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Tasha with an intensity that was both unnerving and strangely familiar. She moved closer, studying Tasha's face as if searching for something. "Child," the woman said, her voice rich and textured with age and emotion. "Do you know who I am?" Tasha shook her head, confused. "I'm sorry, I don't." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "My name is Dorothy Monroe, and I believe I'm your grandmother." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "That's impossible. My grandmother died before I was born." "That's what your father was told," Dorothy said gently. "That's what I wanted him to believe after my husband threw me out for getting too involved with organizing workers at the automotive plant. He told your father I died, and I was too proud and too hurt to fight it. I left Philadelphia thinking I was doing the right thing, letting them move on without me." Devin stepped forward. "Mrs. Monroe reached out to our racing community 3 weeks ago. She had seen news coverage of racing crews doing charity work and wanted to help. When the ice storm hit, she was riding with my crew as an observer, documenting our outreach efforts. She was supposed to be in one of the cars that came to your garage that night, but she stayed behind to coordinate emergency services. When I heard the stories about you," Dorothy continued, tears now streaming freely down her weathered face, "about the female mechanic who sheltered racers, who had inherited her father's shop, who had a gift with engines and a young daughter she was raising alone, I started to wonder. And when I saw your pictures on social media, saw your face," her voice broke. "You look exactly like my sister at your age. Exactly." Tasha felt her own tears starting to fall. "I don't understand. How did you find me?" "Property records, business licenses, obituaries for your father that mentioned surviving family." Dorothy took another step closer. "I should have come looking years ago. I should have fought harder to stay in touch. But pride and pain kept me away. When I finally found you, I discovered you were struggling, facing the same battles I faced 40 years ago." Maya appeared beside Devin, her blue hair seeming even brighter in the morning sunlight. "So, we decided to do something about it," she said with a grin. "Mrs. Monroe called in every favor, reached out to every crew from Virginia to Massachusetts. When racers take care of their own, we don't do it halfway." Rico emerged from the crowd carrying a laptop. "We've got mechanics, electricians, welders, painters, and bodywork specialists. We've got social media managers, business consultants, and marketing experts. Every single one of these 1,500 people came here to help you build something incredible." Chen stepped forward with his characteristic quiet intensity. "That first night, you showed us respect. You worked alongside us as equals. You trusted us with what mattered most to you. Now it's our turn." Devin pulled out a thick folder. "This is a complete business plan for Monroe's Auto Repair. We're transforming it into Monroe's Performance Center, a full-service garage specializing in both regular maintenance and performance upgrades. Mrs. Monroe here has secured funding from her connections in the labor movement. The racing community is providing labor and expertise, and Maya's already got a marketing campaign ready to launch that will bring customers from across the tri-state area." "But I don't understand," Tasha said, her voice shaking. "Why would you all do this for me?" Dorothy reached out and took Tasha's hands in her own weathered ones. "Because you're my granddaughter, and I've lost too many years already. Because your father would have wanted this. And because sometimes The universe gives you a second chance to do right by family. The street erupted in sound as 1,500 racers began to cheer, their voices mixing with the revving of engines in a celebration that seemed to shake the very foundations of the neighborhood. News vans were already arriving, drawn by the unprecedented sight of the largest gathering of street racers anyone had ever seen, all assembled for a single purpose. Tasha looked at the folder in Devon's hands, at her grandmother's tear-stained face, at the 1,500 people who had traveled from across multiple states to help a struggling mechanic they barely knew. The magnitude of it was almost incomprehensible. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll let us help," Dorothy replied softly. "Say you'll give me the chance to be the grandmother I should have been all along. Say you'll take what these people are offering and build something that honors your father's memory while creating your own legacy." Destiny tugged on Tasha's sleeve. "Mama, are these people family?" Tasha looked down at her daughter, then out at the sea of faces watching with hopeful expressions. She thought about the loneliness she had endured, the judgments she had faced, the assumptions people had made about who she was and what she was capable of. And she thought about the night when 25 strangers had become friends, when kindness had triumphed over fear. "Yeah, baby," Tasha said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I think they are." The transformation began immediately. The 1,500 racers organized into work crews with military efficiency. Some focused on expanding the garage space, tearing down walls and opening up the building to create a facility 3 times its original size. Others worked on installing state-of-the-art equipment, hydraulic lifts, diagnostic computers, specialized tools for performance tuning. A dedicated team transformed the front office into a welcoming space with comfortable seating, a children's play area for customers with kids, and a memorial wall honoring Tasha's father and the history of the shop. Maya had taken over the social media campaign, documenting every moment of the transformation. Her posts were going viral across multiple platforms, generating millions of views and thousands of shares. Major automotive publications were picking up the story, and sponsorship offers were flooding in from companies that wanted to be associated with the feel-good narrative of community and redemption. Dorothy worked alongside Tasha throughout the day, sharing stories about her own experiences in the automotive world decades earlier. She had been one of the first female union organizers at a major plant, fighting for fair wages and safe working conditions at a time when women were barely tolerated in industrial spaces. "Your father never knew why I really left," Dorothy told Tasha during a break. "His father, my husband, he was a good man in many ways, but he was terrified of my activism. Thought I would bring trouble to the family. When the plant management started making threats, he gave me an ultimatum: stop organizing or leave. I chose to leave, thinking I was protecting them." "Did you ever regret it?" Tasha asked. "Every single day," Dorothy admitted. "But at the time, I thought I was doing the right thing. Sometimes our best decisions still lead to heartbreak." She looked at Tasha with fierce intensity. "Don't you make the same mistake I did. Don't let pride or fear keep you from accepting help when it's offered. These people see something special in you just like I do." As evening approached, the scale of the transformation became clear. What had been a struggling 2-bay garage was now a gleaming performance center with 6 service bays, a waiting area that looked like it belonged in a high-end dealership, and a dedicated section for performance tuning and custom builds. The exterior had been repainted, new signage installed, and even the parking lot had been resurfaced and restriped. But more impressive than the physical changes was the human transformation taking place. Neighbors who had never spoken to Tasha before were now bringing food and drinks for the workers. Mrs. Washington had organized a community meal, coordinating with local restaurants to provide dinner for 1,500 people. Children who had been afraid of the racers were now climbing on the cars with permission, asking questions and dreaming of the day they might drive something similar. Mr. Rodriguez approached Tasha as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I'm part of the business association for this district, and we discussed your shop at our last meeting. Some members wanted to pressure the city to shut you down, claimed you were bringing down property values. And now? Tasha asked, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Now I see I was wrong. Dead wrong. What's happening here? This is exactly what our neighborhood needs. It's bringing people together, creating jobs, generating positive attention. I'm going to propose at the next meeting that we make Monroe's Performance Center a cornerstone business for neighborhood revitalization. The support from unexpected places continued throughout the evening. The local news had sent multiple crews, and a national morning show was planning to feature the story. A representative from a major automotive parts supplier had offered to establish a wholesale account with terms so favorable they seemed too good to be true. And dozens of potential customers had already called to schedule appointments, eager to support the business that had captured the nation's attention. As midnight approached, the work was essentially complete. The transformation that should have taken months had been accomplished in a single remarkable day through the coordinated effort of 1,500 people who had believed in a woman they barely knew. Devin found Tasha standing in the main service bay, running her hands over the new equipment with an expression that mixed wonder and disbelief. "This is real," he said, not a question but a statement. "This is yours. You earned it." "I sheltered 25 people during a storm," Tasha protested. "That shouldn't be worth all this." "It's not about what it should be worth," Devin replied. "It's about what it meant to us. You saw past the stereotype, past the fear, past everything society told you about who we were. You saw human beings who needed help, and you helped them. That kind of kindness is rare enough that when we find it, we protect it. We amplify it. We make sure it survives in a world that tries to crush it." Dorothy appeared beside them, leaning heavily on her cane, but with eyes that sparkled with satisfaction. "Your father would be so proud," she said to Tasha. "Not just of what you've built here, but of who you are. You kept your promise to him in ways that go far beyond maintaining a business." "I almost lost everything," Tasha said, her voice thick with emotion. "I was ready to give up." "But you didn't," Dorothy replied firmly. "You opened your door instead. You chose trust over fear. And look what came from that choice." As the final racers prepared to depart, each one stopped to say goodbye to Tasha and Destiny. The little girl had been the star of the day, charming everyone she met and soaking up the attention like a sponge. She had promised at least 50 people that she would be a race car driver when she grew up, a dream that no one had discouraged. "Uncle Devin has to go," Devin told Destiny as he knelt to say goodbye. "But I'll be back to visit soon, okay? Promise?" Destiny asked, extending her pinky finger. Devin hooked his pinky with hers solemnly. "Promise." The 1,500 cars departed in waves, their engines creating a symphony that echoed through the Philadelphia night. Neighbors stood on their porches to watch, waving goodbye to people who had been strangers that morning but felt like friends now. When the last car had disappeared and quiet finally descended on the street, Tasha stood with Dorothy and Destiny, looking at the transformed building that bore her family name. "What happens now?" Tasha asked. "Now you run the best damn performance center in Philadelphia," Dorothy said with a grin. "You honor your father's memory by being successful in your own way, and you let your grandmother be part of your life again." "I'd like that," Tasha said softly, and found that she meant it. The woman beside her was a stranger in many ways, but she was also family. Real family. The kind that showed up and stayed even when things were hard. Act 3. The Ripple Effect. 6 months later, Monroe's Performance Center had become more than just a successful business. It had become a movement, a symbol of what was possible when people chose to see past stereotypes and support each other. The garage was always busy now, with a steady stream of customers ranging from street racers seeking performance upgrades to suburban families needing basic maintenance. Tasha had hired 3 full-time mechanics, all women of color who had struggled to find work in traditional shops. The waiting area was constantly full, with customers lingering not just because the work took time, but because they enjoyed the atmosphere of acceptance and expertise. Chen had relocated from Baltimore and was now Tasha's head of performance tuning. His technical knowledge combined with her practical experience had created a reputation for excellence that extended far beyond Philadelphia. Cars came from neighboring states specifically to be worked on at Monroe's. Maya managed the social media presence and had expanded into managing brand partnerships and sponsorships. The revenue from these arrangements had allowed Tasha to offer her employees competitive wages and benefits, something virtually unheard of in independent garages. Dorothy came to work every day, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to. She handled customer service and community relations, using her decades of experience organizing workers to build bridges with local businesses and civic organizations. The labor movement connections she had maintained resulted in union workers from across the city bringing their vehicles to Monroe's, a reliable customer base that ensured steady income. But the most remarkable transformation was in the neighborhood itself. Monroe's Performance Center had become the anchor for a revitalization that felt organic rather than forced. Other businesses had started opening nearby, drawn by the foot traffic and positive attention. A coffee shop, a restaurant, a bookstore, a community center, all of them embracing the diversity and inclusivity that Monroe's modeled. The racing community had made Monroe's their unofficial East Coast headquarters. Most weekends saw dozens of performance vehicles parked outside as crews gathered to work on their cars, share information, and participate in the community events that Dorothy organized. The negative stereotypes about street racers were slowly being replaced by a more nuanced understanding of a subculture that contained multitudes: parents, professionals, artists, activists, all united by a love of cars and speed. This morning, Tasha stood in her office looking at a framed photograph that hung on the wall. It showed her father standing in front of the original garage, young and optimistic, with his whole life ahead of him. Beside it hung a new photo from the day of the transformation. Tasha, Dorothy, Destiny, and Devon, all standing in front of the rebuilt Performance Center, surrounded by hundreds of racers. "Your father would be amazed," Dorothy said, entering the office with 2 cups of coffee. "Not just at the success, but at how you've created something that honors his values while being completely your own vision." "I keep thinking about that night," Tasha admitted. "How terrified I was when I opened that door, how I almost didn't do it." "But you did," Dorothy replied, "and that choice changed everything." Destiny burst into the office, full of the boundless energy of a 3.5-year-old who believed the entire world was her playground. "Mama, Uncle Chen says I can help him today." "Help him do what?" Tasha asked with amused suspicion. "He's teaching me about torque wrenches," Destiny announced proudly, as if this was the most exciting news imaginable. Tasha and Dorothy exchanged glances that mixed exasperation with delight. Destiny had inherited her grandfather's passion for mechanical work, and the crew at Monroe's encouraged it at every opportunity. Through the office window, Tasha could see the garage floor busy with activity. Her employees worked with confidence and skill, treating every customer with respect, regardless of what they drove or who they were. This was what her father had dreamed of, a place where excellence and integrity mattered more than appearances. The phone rang, and Tasha answered to find Devon on the line. "Turn on the news," he said without preamble. "Channel 7, now." Tasha grabbed the remote and switched on the small TV in her office. A morning show was featuring a segment about small businesses making a difference in their communities, and there on the screen was footage of Monroe's Performance Center. The reporter's voice narrated over images of the garage in action. 6 months ago, Monroe's was a struggling auto shop on the verge of closure. Today, it's a thriving business that employs 15 people and has become a model for community-based economic development. But the story of how this transformation happened is what makes it truly remarkable. The segment then showed footage from the day of the mass gathering, 1,500 racing cars filling the street, all there to help a single mother who had shown them kindness. Interviews with Dorothy, with Devon, with neighborhood residents, all telling pieces of the story that had captured the nation's attention. People see street racers as criminals, Devin said in his interview segment. They see tattooed people with loud cars and assume we're dangerous. But Tasha Monroe saw human beings who needed help. She took a risk on us, and we're spending the rest of our lives proving she was right to do so. The segment ended with a live remote from outside Monroe's, where the reporter stood with a line of customers waiting to bring their cars in. The lesson here, the reporter concluded, is that kindness has a ripple effect. One act of compassion during a storm has touched thousands of lives and transformed an entire neighborhood. From Philadelphia, this is... Tasha muted the TV, overwhelmed with emotion. Dorothy put a hand on her shoulder, and Destiny climbed into her lap, sensing that her mother needed comfort even if she didn't fully understand why. "I'm scared," Tasha admitted quietly. "Everything's going so well. What if I mess it up? What if I can't maintain this success?" "Then you'll figure it out," Dorothy said firmly. "With the family you've built around you, with the skills you've developed, with the community that believes in you, success isn't about never failing. It's about having people who catch you when you stumble and help you stand back up." A knock on the office door interrupted the moment. Chen poked his head in with an apologetic expression. "Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation out front." "What kind of situation?" Tasha asked, immediately concerned. "The kind where a major automotive magazine wants to feature us in their next issue, and they're here right now asking if you have time for an interview." Tasha looked at Dorothy, who smiled and nodded encouragingly. "Go," Dorothy said. "Tell them your story. Tell them how a grandmother found her lost family. Tell them how street racers became heroes. Tell them everything that society says can't happen, and show them proof that it can." As Tasha walked out onto the garage floor to meet with the journalists, she was struck by how fundamentally different her life had become. 6 months ago, she had been alone, desperate, and on the verge of losing everything. Now she was surrounded by family, friends, employees, and customers who all believed in her vision. The interview took over an hour, with the journalist asking detailed questions about her background, her father's legacy, the night of the ice storm, and the remarkable transformation that had followed. But the question that stuck with Tasha most was the final one. What would you say to other people who are struggling, who feel like they're alone and out of options? Tasha thought carefully before answering. "I'd say that kindness is never wasted, even when you're scared to give it. I'd say that the people society tells you to fear might turn out to be exactly the family you need. And I'd say that your lowest moment might be the beginning of your greatest transformation, but only if you're brave enough to open the door when opportunity knocks." That evening, after the customers had left and the employees had gone home, Tasha sat with Dorothy and Destiny in the waiting area of the performance center. Devin had stopped by, as he often did, bringing dinner from the restaurant next door. "I got something for you," Devin said, pulling out a small jewelry box. "Open it." Inside was a silver keychain shaped like a race car, engraved with words that made Tasha's eyes fill with tears. "Family isn't blood. It's who shows up." "That's beautiful," she whispered. "It's true," Devin replied. "You showed up for us when no one else would. We showed up for you because that's what family does. And now we keep showing up for each other." Destiny had fallen asleep in Dorothy's lap, exhausted from another day of helping in the garage. Dorothy stroked her great-granddaughter's hair gently, her expression content in a way that spoke of healing old wounds. "I lost so many years," Dorothy said quietly. "Years I should have spent with your father, with you. I can't get them back." "No," Tasha agreed. "But we can make the most of the time we have now." "That's all anyone can do," Devin added. "Make the most of now. Learn from yesterday, plan for tomorrow, but live in the moment you're actually in." Tasha looked around at the space she had built with help from the most unlikely sources. The gleaming equipment, the memorial wall honoring her father, the photos of the racing community that had adopted her as one of their own. This was more than a successful business. It was proof that the world could be different than society insisted it had to be. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Just got confirmation. That national morning show wants to do a full feature next month. Get ready for more attention." Tasha smiled and set the phone aside. More attention, more customers, more opportunities. All of it stemming from one night when she had chosen courage over fear, compassion over caution. "You know what I think about sometimes?" she said to Devin and Dorothy. "All the people out there right now who are where I was 6 months ago. Struggling alone, afraid to ask for help, convinced that the world is full of people who want to hurt them." "What about them?" Dorothy asked. "I think about how their whole life could change if they just took one risk, if they opened one door, if they chose to see the humanity in people they've been told to fear." Devin nodded thoughtfully. "The story isn't over. Every person who comes through these doors, every kid like Destiny who grows up seeing this model of community and support, every racer who realizes they can be judged on who they are rather than what they drive, all of that is the story continuing to unfold." "So what do we do?" Tasha asked. "We keep showing up," Dorothy said simply. "We keep opening doors, we keep choosing kindness even when it's scary, and we keep proving that a different world is possible." As the last light faded from the sky and the Philadelphia night settled over the performance center, Tasha Monroe sat with her found family and felt something she had not experienced in years. Absolute certainty that she was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. The racing community had taught her that family was not defined by blood but by loyalty, that success was measured not in dollars but in lives touched, and that the fastest way to change the world was one act of kindness at a time. 6 months ago, she had been a struggling single mother on the verge of losing everything. Tonight, she was the owner of a thriving business, the granddaughter who had found her lost grandmother, the friend to hundreds of people who had once been strangers, and the living proof that courage and compassion could triumph over fear and prejudice. The story had started with a woman alone in a storm, opening her door to people she had every reason to fear. But it had become something far larger, a testament to the truth that we are all connected, that our choices ripple outward in ways we can never fully predict, and that sometimes the people who look most different from us are exactly the family we've been searching for all along. "Mama," Destiny murmured sleepily, stirring in Dorothy's lap. "Are we happy now?" Tasha looked at her daughter, at her grandmother, at Devin who had become like a brother. She looked at the successful business surrounding them, at the community they had built, at the future that stretched out before them, full of possibility. "Yes, baby," she whispered, her voice full of wonder and gratitude. "We're happy now. We're finally, truly happy." Outside, a car engine roared to life somewhere in the distance, the sound carrying through the night air like a promise that the racing family was still out there, still watching over their own, still ready to show up when someone needed them. And inside Monroe's Performance Center, 3 generations of women and 1 honorary brother sat together in the peaceful aftermath of a miracle, living proof that kindness is never wasted, that family is what you make it, and that opening your door to strangers might just open the door to everything you ever dreamed of finding. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.